Throughout history, mermaids can be found in nearly every major culture in the world, and in one form or another, they've long since spread beyond the superstitious sailors who first spoke of them. And although sirens may seem similar, originally they were far from it. Like many of the wonderful and sometimes terrifying creatures from the ancient world, sirens, harpies, and mermaids are all half human, half animals. These creatures have shown up in film, games, literature, and TV. They're often thought of as interchangeable due to some similar features, but they are very different. And as an ancient sailor, knowing the difference will save your skin, as the consequences of stumbling across one or the other is the difference between a prosperous voyage or dying a horrible death. Let's begin with the most well-known, beautiful, and usually benign: mermaids. In folklore, a mermaid is an aquatic creature with the head and upper body of a female human and the tail of a fish. In some cultures, the mermaid signifies life and fertility within the ocean, but in others she embodies the destructive nature of the water, luring sailors to their death and serving as an omen for storms, unruly seas, and disaster. One of the earliest mermaid legends appeared in Syria around 1000 BC, when the goddess Atargatis dove into a lake to take the form of a fish. As the gods there would not allow her to give up her great beauty, only her bottom half became a fish and she kept her top half in human form. From then on, history is full of tales of these beautiful and mysterious creatures, and not just the womenfolk but mermen who, for example, appear in Mesopotamian artwork from the Old Babylonian period, usually on what are called cylinder seals. As far as rational explanations go, some historians believe that the sailors who wrote about seeing mermaids were actually delirious from months at sea and mistook manatees for mermaids. Manatees' tails are resemblant of a mermaid's tail, and when you've gone so long without seeing a woman, you might just imagine one too. So, what do harpies and sirens have to do with mermaids? Although the latter two are very similar, harpies and sirens looked nothing like mermaids. Sirens were creatures from Greek mythology, which enticed sailors to their destruction with their irresistibly beautiful singing. They were hybrid creatures with the body of a bird and the head of a woman. Sometimes they were also depicted with the arms of a human. According to Homer, the sirens lived on an island near Scylla and Charybdis, which are traditionally located in the Strait of Messina between Italy and Sicily. Here they awaited passing ships and with their lovely music enticed sailors to their doom. The meadows of the sirens' home island were said to have been perpetually layered with the rotting corpses of their hapless victims. One of their most famous stories is the sirens' attempt to lure Odysseus and his crew as they passed on their way through Ithaca following the Trojan War. The great Greek hero was already renowned for his quick wits and planning, and he proved to be a much more difficult catch than the sirens' usual victims. Advised by the goddess Circe, the hero had himself tied to the ship's mast so that he could hear the sirens' beautiful song and not be tempted to land, while the rest of his crew were made immune by blocking their ears with wax, so they all sailed safely out of harm's way. As far as how Homer describes the sirens, here's a quote from the Odyssey. "The sirens bewitch everybody who approaches them. There is no homecoming for the man who draws near to them unawares. For with their high song the sirens bewitch him, as they sit there in a meadow piled high with the moldering skeletons of men, whose withered skin still hangs upon their bones." While harpies also come from Greek mythology, there's absolutely nothing beautiful or sonorous about them. Although pottery art depicted them as beautiful women with wings, according to those who came in contact with them, they're generally depicted as monstrous birds with the head of maidens, faces pale with hunger, and long claws on their hands. Roman and Byzantine writers made sure to emphasize their ugliness. Think of them not so much as half woman, half hawk or eagle like sirens, but more like human vultures. Aeschylus, who was an ancient Greek tragedian, often called the father of tragedy, described them as such. Before this man, an extraordinary band of women slept, seated on thrones. No, not women, but rather gorgons I call them. And yet I cannot compare them to the forms of gorgons either. Once before, I saw some creatures in a painting carrying off the feast of Phineas, but these are wingless in appearance, black, altogether disgusting. They snore with repulsive breaths. They drip from their eyes hateful drops. Their attire is not to bring either before the statues of gods or into the homes of men. So the Harpies' physical descriptions and myths, besides some small changes, generally stayed the same. So what happened to sirens? If we look at art and myth throughout history, by medieval times, sirens stopped being bird ladies and became fish ladies. So how did this happen? Well, even in ancient Greece, sirens were already evolving. Male sirens used to appear in art, but disappeared as artists' attitudes shifted. Now, all female and anthropomorphized, sirens changed from monstrous birds with human heads to instrument-playing women who just so happened to have wings and bird feet. So it was the styles of art and culture that killed off the more monstrous, although beautiful traits of the sirens. They began to produce art which showed them having all kinds of different traits. Over the years, sirens have made changes from being basically human all the way to becoming dragons. In the Liber Monstrorum, which is the Book of Monsters, from the late 7th, early 8th century, the anonymous author proposes, quote, "a little picture of a sea girl or siren, which, if it has a head of reason, is followed by all kinds of shaggy and scaly tails." So as time passed, harpies stayed on the islands while sirens slipped into the sea and began to become more and more fish-like until they were nearly indistinguishable from mermaids, other than the act of luring men to their destruction with their beautiful voices, which some people still attribute to mermaids. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more topics on mythology, let me know down in the comments. Ever wonder why vampires need to be invited in? Watch my video on the rule of invitation. Thanks so much. Good night.
I'm with the